Gary Garland, and tonight the Beatles Hour begins a 2-week special on the Beatles' original drummer, Pete Best. Most people don't realize that before Ringo Starr became drummer for the Beatles, it was John, Paul, George, Stu, and Pete. Pete Best was their original drummer, but for some unknown reason, just before the Beatles rocketed off to international fame, Pete was fired and Ringo Starr took over as drummer in a fast switch that has always been shrouded in mystery. Pete Best disappeared, and until recently had granted absolutely no interviews. So after 20 years of silence, tonight Pete Best tells his story. What you're going to hear are highlights from the hours Pete and I spent together. We filled up a tape recorder with Beatle history, and the very first thing I wanted to know was the story behind how Pete became a drummer and a Beatle.
Very simply, I was born in Madras, India, not Liverpool like a lot of people think. But I came over to Liverpool, England, 1945, and sort of been there ever since. You know, some of the roots are there. I got into show business simply because of the fact that Mother had a club called the Casbah, which is underneath the basement of my house, or her house, I should say, in West Derby. And she got a group together called the Quarrymen, which was just a strict guitar group. But it turned out to be John, George, and Paul, who later turned out to be the Beatles. Consequently, I sort of set my own group up, just a fun group. And we used to play down there. The guys disappeared from playing at the Casbah. They went on a tour with a guy called Johnny Gentle, and they did a tour of Scotland. And I was told when they got back that they changed the name to the Silver Beatles, and they'd taken on a guy called Tommy Moore who was playing drums for them. Now, at the end of that tour, Tommy packed in. He said he'd had enough. Okay, so they were looking for another drummer. And consequently, Paul knew I was playing drums. My group by this time had folded up, so I was at a loose end. So I got a phone call from Paul. He said, "Pete, we got the offer to go to Germany." Right. So he says, "We need a drummer. If you're interested, come down and audition." So I said, "Yeah, sounds great." Went down, auditioned the next day, and played about 6 numbers with the guys. And they turned around and said, "Yeah, great, you're in." And 2 days after that, I was a Beatle, and I was in Hamburg.
3 cool cats, 3 cool cats.
We were playing at the Kaisercar, right? And we'd been drinking, and we got liquored up this night. And we all decided we were going to go on stage, do what we wanted to do. So George peels off. He gets down to a bathing costume, a pair of Wellingtons, nothing else on. Goes on stage. Paul gets dressed up in a girl's frock and a hat, something like this. Goes on stage. But John Topsy, you see, in the dressing room that we had at the Kaiserkeller, which was just like a general restroom, there used to be a broken up old toilet seat in the back. So John, couldn't live it down. Just the toilet seat, puts it round his head, strips down to his underpants, nothing else on it. So when these apparitions walk out, the crowd goes berserk, they've never seen anything like it. And we get up on stage, and it gets to one of John's numbers. I think it was either something like Sweet Little 16 or something like this. It was a good blendy rock number. So, middle of this number, John deadpan as usual, turns round, turns it back to the audience, and just drops his underpants. Okay? And you can just imagine it, there's 2 big rosy cheeks, sort of looking at the German audiences, There was a sudden stony silence, sort of the people in the front sort of, what's happened, look at this, the place after that, the place erupted.